Welcome to our very first BBB Cannabis Resource Panel. I hope you can all hear me well. You can't see me on the screen. My name is Casey Hunter. I'm our Business Services Manager here at BBB. I'm facilitating some of the questions today, but the talent is really who you see sitting in front of you. Girma, I'm going to start with you again. So Girma, please tell us a little bit about you, your organization, what you do, and how you help cannabis businesses.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Girma Moaning. I'm a retail broker at Price Edwards. Basically, what that means is I help groups that want to purchase or lease retail space or develop retail space. So at Price Edwards, we're a full service commercial real estate firm. So whether you're looking for grow space, production space, processing space, or retail space, we can help with those. And then we also provide property management.
Perfect, Girma. Thank you so much. Monica, let's hear from you. Tell us about you.
Good afternoon. My name is Monica Hickok. I work for Polston Tax Resolution and Accounting. I'm part of the Cannabis Tax Strategy team there. So we work with all the clients on the accounting, keeping up with 280E laws, the book tax difference with cost of goods sold on the tax return.
Perfect. Thanks, Monica. Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina Toon with Ironside Law Firm. Thank you for having us today. I'm excited about this panel. I'm an attorney here in Oklahoma, and I have been since 2008. Just a little bit about my practice background and kind of what got me here with cannabis. I started out with a heavy emphasis on representing employers and was trained in that from the HR perspective. So then when we had the new legislation come into place, it was around the same time I started my own firm about 3 years ago. We're hitting the 3-year anniversary actually this week, so I'm excited to be here for that too. With regard to my experience in cannabis, it started out before the rules and regulations went into place, and so I was helping employers understand how to prepare. And since that time, we've had the rules and regs go into place. We've had some changes occur with those rules and regulations. Things are more definitive now. So on the HR side of things, I'm very well versed, but then also I've had the opportunity to represent companies that are interested in setup, companies that are trying to resolve things pre-litigation, and then companies that are trying to resolve things through litigation. And that's why I think that this panel is incredibly resourceful, because I've seen where things have gone wrong and things have gone well. So if we can all combine to talk about what the best practices are at the inception, I think that's a really great idea for everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Christina. Last but certainly not least, Russell.
Yes, Russ Wolfe. I am a relationship manager at Oklahoma State Bank. I've been in banking a little over 7 years. I started at the commercial lending side of things, compliance, managing a portfolio of customers. A little over a year and a half ago, as a bank, we decided to start taking on, cannabis-related customers. We started opening up operating checking accounts, and now I help from the application phase all the way through our current customers and going out on doing site visits and kind of continued with our due diligence programs with and our customers and everything in between.
Wonderful. Thank you, Russ. I think we're ready to kick off with question number 1. Christina, I think you said you'd like to kick off with that first question, so I'm going to start with you. What are the biggest challenges that you see new cannabis businesses struggle with?
Okay, so I have to start with the state versus federal regulation, because I'm sure everybody recalls that cannabis is still not federally legal. Okay, so there's some implications on that on the criminal side, of course. That's not my expertise, but it still is recognized as a Schedule I substance under the Controlled Substances Act. So that actually provides a lot of confusion on how to handle state versus federal employees within the state and what kind of positions are considered to be safety sensitive, for which you can and the ways in which you can handle a person who has a medicinal marijuana card, as it falls under the Disabilities Act and Leave Acts and the other kind of medical related questions. And that is honestly an entire subject for a separate presentation if we went into the HR side of things. With regard to cash flow and banking and taxes, at the onset, people were heavily handling this business with regard to cash because banks weren't allowing people to open up accounts that had cannabis businesses due to the federal issues that I just mentioned. And so that's why we have these professionals here today that are offering those services. With regard to accounting, I've seen where because of the cash flow operations at the beginning, I've seen kind of things go wrong, and it's a really hard thing to monitor. And even when cannabis industries are looking back at when they started now and doing bookkeeping and trying to clean up those things. That's why Monica's here to talk about that today. With regard to zoning, I've just not so much issues related to zoning, but more inquiries related to, hey, where can I set up my business? You know, what are the zoning laws within this county? And are there issues with, you know, neighboring businesses, those kinds of questions. One of the biggest things that I've seen as of lately, because we've had this ongoing in the state now for several years, are what I call business divorces. And I'm not saying that to in any way be negative, but in reality, when you get a business, whether it's cannabis or not, you have the opportunity for things to go wrong, even though you feel in your heart and your deepest that you can trust people for those things to go right. And so in the absence of very good operating agreements, vendor contracts, transfer agreements, real estate contracts, other vendor contracts, buyer agreements, advertising and marketing arrangements, and investor proposals and partnership arrangements, you can really have some issues if you don't have things very clearly drafted. And that's what I'm here for. It's not always fun to write out all those things and be entirely specific, but it is fun in the event that you have a dispute and you're later trying to define what the relationship was between the parties.
Does anybody want to add? Girma or Monica? Do you guys want to add?
I will. A lot of that was a great summary, and it touched on a lot of different things there. But a lot of what I see on the tax and accounting side is you have your, master grower that's, strictly there, to run the business. And then you have your financial guy. Well, those two guys have different, important things that they're taking a look at in the business. When it comes to setting up business structures in the very beginning, I see that, maybe they didn't go to an attorney to set this up. And now we have something that was not structured properly when it comes for supporting 280E and taxes, because you can't just form all these separate entities in order to get creative to run 280E through to try to attach more deductions. Everything has to be legitimized in cannabis. So structure in the very beginning and understand how entities need to be set up, and also them understanding that, yes, you still do have to file a tax return. It is federally illegal, but you still are earning income and you must file a tax return. I get a lot of clients that are shocked that they were told they have to file a tax return and they know nothing about 280E. So if this is a business that you're going to jump in, definitely get with the right team of professionals.
Russell, Girma, do you have anything to add to question number one? If you don't, we can move to question two.
I think building on that, one challenge, in addition to the items that were just covered, is just the federal laws that currently exist, because there's a lot of groups that are trying to operate in multiple states or have partners or funding coming from multiple states. And getting those laws passed on the federal level will make a huge difference going forward.
Yeah, no, and of course, kind of what I see at the banking level is a little bit of the compliance and the day-to-day operations that they're not used to running as a business. Some of these are first-time business owners, and it's just trying to even balance the checkbook is sometimes can be a trouble. So that's why we have all these guys here. It helps everybody out.
Let's go on to question number two. Where can a cannabis business find information on letters of organization, which is what Monica talked a little bit about, I think? C corporation and S corporation, LLC, so on and so forth. Monica, do you want to start with that?
I'll go ahead and start with that. Well, in the very beginning of the inception of, having an idea of running a cannabis operation, the first step would be, setting up at least an entity and getting the entity in place. Now, I always tell our clients that as time goes by, we need to take a look at what the structure is on a tax treatment level to see if there's a strategy in place. You don't just hop into certain types of entities because they require different type of compliances. S Corp, your shareholders have to have reasonable compensation in place. Due to the different cannabis activities, if you're a grower, you have more ability to put cost of goods sold within to your numbers. Processors have different cost of goods sold and dispensaries have different cost of goods sold. So I always say, get with your attorney, find the right team, get an LLC created, have the attorney maybe speak with us. Let's go back and forth to make sure that the entity structure is just at least in place. And then later we can take a look at what the taxation treatment is and when it makes sense to jump into that. Because like I said, the different cannabis activities have different cost of goods sold.
So going back to finding an attorney, where's the best place to look for that? I mean, you're a brand new business. There's a lot of attorneys out there who, well, Christina, you can talk a little bit about this too. Where's the best place to look for a cannabis attorney in Oklahoma?
We have a lot of people that specialize in cannabis. There's some specific cannabis firms. I think that with any selection of an attorney, it's going to be a personality fit, right? If they're going to be alongside you and your accounting professional, your real estate professionals and banking, you want to make sure that the personality fits. The ones that I do know of, they're all exceptional. It just depends on what your business specifically needs.
I love that you said that. It is so much about our personality and how well they can work with the personality of our business. I think we kind of get caught up in, well, this is a family friend and I've known him for years and years and years, but it might not always be the best fit for your business. So great answer. Do you have anything to add about S-Corps, setting up your organization and what that looks like?
So we were all kind of communicating about this question ahead of time, and there's not really a website to go to, in our opinion, to figure out your letters of organization, C Corp, and all that information. That's really going to be a professional opinion, and I really enjoy working with all the professionals with my clients. I mean, I like to get on the phone with the accounting professional for sure when we're dealing with these kinds of issues. But in terms of the steps, I think you first decide what kind of entity you're interested in. The OMA website provides a lot of detail about this, almost too much. And you're going to see this later on in the presentation. Like I've had to cut and paste some regs because I don't know everything off the top of my head, even though people think attorneys do. But you go figure out, you want to be a dispensary? Are you a grower? Are you a processor, right? What are your goals? Then go talk to your accounting professionals and other professionals. And then you go to the Secretary of State website, like we talked about, to figure out your entity name, to see if there's a registered trade name that you can use, or if there's something same or similar that would be confusing within the stream of commerce to the consumers. And you want to familiarize yourself with those OMA rules and regulations and get with the right team.
Absolutely. Thanks. Girma?
So someone who sees this much later in the process, oftentimes, whatever you do, please don't go to a website that charges you $99 and just click and fill it out. Please consult local professionals.
Great. Sir. Ross, anything to add to that one?
No, I always even tell our customers to go to the Secretary of State and check out the website.
Monica, we're going to start with you on this question. At what stage do you need to bring in an accountant? And I think I know where you're headed with this.
I would say definitely at the very beginning, because here's the deal, guys. This is a business. It's a growing business. But this business has way different rules than there is out there for other cash-based businesses. Other cash-based businesses, they have startup costs, they have marketing, they have advertising. That's not the case of what you can take when it comes to tax and accounting. But also at the very beginning, it's good to have conversations with your accountant, and that way your accountant can say, what do you know about 280E? You're restricted to cost of goods sold because of 280E. You have a book tax difference. Who's the attorney that you're working with? Because in reality, the attorney and the accountant can be your best friends within your business. And so you want to have that good relationship to say, hey, Christina, you had mentioned that it might need a management company. Let's talk through that. Was it asset protection? Because if it doesn't legitimately is in place due to support a non-cannabis company as well, then we might have to look at applying 280E to that management company. So there's lots of different conversations about entity structuring, understanding taxation, and with cost of goods sold, that starts at different phases. Once seed goes in soil, you're subject to cost of goods sold at that time. Before that, you're looking at startup cost. Dispensaries, they come in as a finished product, but maybe you can map something out and walk the layout of the facility to get more into cost of goods sold. Those are beginning conversations that someone needs to understand in the very beginning, because it might change on whether they wait to do a leasehold improvement or they go ahead and do that beginning upstep, startup costs at that time. So honestly, in the very beginning, that tends to work out the best.
Absolutely. Sticking with you for this next question, if a company is wanting to become vertically integrated, is there anything specific they should know?
So as of right now, the plan is that when I sit down and talk to clients, I got to understand where their goals are and what they're wanting to do. Talk through hey, if you do become a dispensary, you have less cost of goods sold. So maybe if you do want to become vertically integrated at that last stage, when we do get the dispensary, maybe we have the dispensary smaller because there's not a lot of rents and deductions that you can take while we start with our grow facility. Typically I see cultivation, and then I see it go into processing, and then I see it go into dispensary. But it also, needs to make sense if they can find the space for it, if they have the right partners for it. So, that's definitely a conversation to have in the very beginning too, to understand where everybody's goals are. However, we were kind of discussing this in the very beginning too. There's some different proposed changes right now in Oklahoma that could limit dispensaries, processors, and cultivators. So if something like that were to pass, you might want to start having those conversations now about whether or not you do want to go vertically integrated, because at some point in time, if that law passes, it could limit the licenses.
Unpack that for me just a little bit more. And who should be a part of those initial conversations? Not just the accountant, but maybe business partners,
your attorneys, investors.
Great, thank you. Moving along to the next question, and we'll start with Girma on this one. Finding a building to rent for my cannabis business has been difficult. I have heard this from a few cannabis businesses that have reached out to BBB. So what characteristics are landlords looking for a cannabis tenant?
This is such a great question, and this is a topic that I could truly talk for the next 3 hours on. I promise I won't, but there's so many facets to this. At the simplest level, kind of on a binary basis, it's essentially supply and demand. For the last 18, 24 months or so, it's just been endless, where if you're a commercial real estate broker, it's very common on a slow day to get over a dozen calls with a group looking for space. So with that in mind, there's specific things that you can do so that you increase your chances. Number one, understand what you're looking for. And with websites like LoopNet or whatnot, just do a quick search of the market so that you have a general understanding of what rental rates are. Because if we get a phone call and someone says, I need a space for a dispensary and I want to pay $800 a month, then that's not a call that will go to the highest of the priority list of finding a location for, just because is it possible to find those? I've seen it happen, but is it likely? I would say it's very, very unlikely. Then additionally, understanding that because of the federal law, if a ownership group is in multiple states, or if, for example, they are a real estate investment trust, which you'll commonly see as a REIT, or if they have national retailers, they often have different or multiple restrictions that prohibit them from leasing your space. And even if you offer to pay triple the asking rent rate, that may not happen because, for example, many national retailers have language within their lease that states that if a dispensary moves in, that national retailer doesn't have to pay rent while the dispensary is there. So if you're posting up next to a 80,000 square foot national tenant, your rent versus what that tenant, that's a pretty substantial delta there for the landlord to deal with. So having your team in place, your CPA, your lender, your attorney, understanding what you're looking for, and then clearly articulating the business points is very critical. One thing that we see often is people often talk about the strains that they're growing. While that is very exciting, most landlords are not deeply interested in different specific strains that you're growing. So giving them understanding of, this is how much capital we have, this is how much capital we'd like to spend on each location, and this is our infrastructure, whether you're dispensary only, grow only, processor only, all the above, etc. Those are details that make a huge difference, and also explaining whether all of your funding comes from existing cannabis operations or if they're coming from outside sources.
Rex, do you want to add anything to that?
I reached out to one of our customers, and he has a lot of power strips and stuff like that. So he kind of was able to give us just a real quick, easy. So these are just kind of good best practices, I would say. And this is just something that he looks for specifically. So it's not maybe industry-wide or anything, but they said they're always looking for quality operators, kind of clean stores, upscale, and or if they're brand new, kind of show us how they're going to be one. They will look at their financials, so they want kind of strong financials. They'll take a look at the products and the store name, make sure it fits with all their other tenants. They really don't want to take anybody with any really bad names out there. And they also just look at the operation and the history, any money issue, crimes, are they just good business people? They also ask the tenant if they're going to be willing to work with them if the smell actually becomes an issue with the co-tenants. So, just some basic little things to think about.
I'm going to do another follow-up question, and anybody can answer this one. Are there more restrictions for a cannabis business owner compared to, let's say, a bakery? And how can you prepare from the get-go to be ready to answer those for a landlord?
I would say that most landlords are relatively educated with the rules and restrictions that come into place. As Russell just stated, being transparent with your financial capability probably plays a much larger role, because if they cannot do it because of either their ownership structure or their existing leases, that just in the short term can't be changed. But if there's a clear understanding of how you do business, why you do business, and you have the financial capacity to do so, that's going to make things much, much easier for a landlord to find ways to resolve the obstacles. Another thing out there that I'm seeing is there's groups that specifically will buy buildings for cannabis operators. They go out, purchase buildings or develop buildings. That's their only source. And if you can connect with one of those groups, they can give you a checklist of items that they want to see on the front end, and it can be a very symbiotic relationship.
Super helpful, thank you. Does anybody have anything they want to add for question number 5? Christina, I have you listed here.
Only because it was interesting because you used the example of a bakery, and a cannabis entity can be a food processor, and they have to comply with the food permits and actually the Oklahoma Food Code. Okay, they're set up like a kitchen. They have to come in and get permitting. So, I think that a landlord would be looking at, like you both said, what kind of entity is going in. You're going to be thinking about maybe the aroma that could be put off, even though there's not any restrictions within the law about those sorts of things. You might be considering it in terms of like a nuisance value.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. And Christina, we'll start with you. What zoning laws are in place that I should know about for my cannabis business? For example, opening near a church or a school.
Okay, so there's not the restrictions on the churches like the churches wanted. That did not pass. They wanted to be included in on the 1,000 feet restriction, where you have to prove, if you're a cannabis entity in your licensing and what you submit to the state, that you're 1,000 feet from a public or private school. Definitively does not include homeschool, daycare, or child care facility. But you have to provide proof. And so you have to show that from the entrance and the exit of that public or private school. And there's been a lot of contesting of those boundaries, but right now that's still in place with the 1,000 feet. I haven't had the occasion to have to address that very often. Have you had to address that often?
Many times. On the OMA website, there is a link where you can put in the address of the location you're considering, and it will give you the preliminary, yes or no, whether that site can be considered. But always, please look on Google Maps and Google words like school and church, and then drive the area, and then speak with your attorney, because especially early on, there were a lot of licenses that were given out that were clearly in violation. And then that turns into a pretty substantial issue, because most leases are going to indicate that you as the operator is responsible for that. Also, there's a few municipalities that have very strict rules. As a general rule, I would say don't be afraid to go near a competitor, because if you look at national retailers, they often cluster in the same areas. And the reason they do that is because the demographics, the access, the visibility, all those components are in place. So if I were opening a new location today, the first thing I would say is, where my competitor is located that I like, and I would try to locate near them.
Moving on to question number 7, and I'll add a little bit to this, but then Christina, I'll let you kind of take it. Cannabis businesses have popped up all over the state of Oklahoma, and this is touching exactly what you just talked about. Yeah, that's right. Cannabis businesses have popped up all over the state of Oklahoma. What resources are available to compare where my competition is located? So you talked a little bit about this, and the only note that I wanted to add is that the Small Business Development Center, the business advisors there have resources about competition in the area and how you can gauge that, how close you are, and those are government funded. So great resource to look into, and I'll share that afterward as well. Christina, do you want to add to that?
Can add a little bit to that. There's actually on the OMA website, you get a list of every single dispensary with their license number, their email, their phone, their city, zip, and county, and that's for processors, dispensaries, transporters, waste disposals, labs, research facilities, and educational facilities. It doesn't include their address, okay, but it does include the county, city, and zip. So that's another, I think, interesting resource. And then I also had down, there's an app for that. If you're interested in seeing what, competitive dispensaries have, there's weed maps, and then there's another one that I think has come out. I don't recall what the name of it is, but there's other application companies that are trying to compete with weed maps, and you can go in and see what kind of products, the dispensaries are selling.
This is not a cheap resource, but there are a couple of companies, and there's a few others that will be coming on the market shortly. One is called Placer.ai. The other is called Buxton. Anyone who has a smartphone, there's over 700 apps that feed data to these two companies, which then they can give an incredibly detailed demographics and pattern overlay. So if you were trying to make a pretty substantial decision and you utilize Placer data, you will be able to make the most detailed decisions and beat your competitors pretty easily.
Great, thank you, Girma. Where can I find these resources at?
There's private companies that provide data. One is called Buxton. The other is Placer, Placer, and it's .ai, not .com.
I have them written down here. We'll share back with our attendees so they can check out if they want to. Christina, I'm so excited for this question. I'm a marketing nerd. So when it comes to marketing, what language or types of advertising should new cannabis business owners avoid?
Okay, so I went and I pulled the statute. Bear with me because that's what I do. So advertising includes marketing, but it doesn't include packaging and labeling. So when I was thinking of this, and you're thinking in terms of billboards versus the actual products that the dispensaries are selling, right? Those are two different things. In terms of advertising, you have to comply with Oklahoma law, but the regs provide with regard to cannabis that advertising can't contain any statements, illustrations, or material that's deceptive, false, or misleading, promotes overconsumption, represents that the use of marijuana has curative or therapeutic effects, depicts a child or other person under legal age to consume marijuana, has the presence of a child or any other depiction designed in any manner to be especially appealing to children or other persons under 18 that would consume marijuana, and has any manner or design that would be especially appealing to children. This says, sorry, that's the same one, or other persons under 18 years of age. The OMA website provides a really helpful brochure on this that talks about the difference of with the food processing and how you're putting it on your packaging. Some of those things, like food is defined, food or drink for man, chewing gum, or articles used for components of any such article under like the state code for food, okay? Let me find some other. So there's very specific, like the sizing that you have to put on the packages, and it has to be legible. You can't have like a flap that has the required information on packaging and labeling. It has to be on the outside of the package. It can't violate any federal trademark law or regulation. I think that's a really interesting thing. You can't get federal trademark approval on something that is not federally. Exactly. And so, but the state, you can get a state trademark. I don't see a lot of cannabis industries doing that, but you can. And if it's going to be a same or similar name, because there's a lot of words that are used the same for marijuana. And so you may want to look into that in your state just to protect yourself, but it is whoever put it out there first.
Sure. I think they're both probably drawing past a few dispensers like, clever name, or like, oh, I probably wouldn't do that if it were me. So yeah, absolutely. Where can we share any of this information with our attendees, or where can we find some information about marketing and how they can be in the know of what they can and cannot do in Oklahoma?
So that's where the OMA website provides an incredible, helpful amount of information. But even the website says, read through these, but get with your legal professional because it's going to be specific to whatever you're doing. Everybody's doing it differently.
So I think the recurring theme is make some friends in the community and work with some local businesses because they know what they're doing. So thank you for that. Let's talk banking. Why do I need a bank account for my business instead of me carrying around a giant wad of cash? And then what benefits are associated with an OSB cannabis account?
Yeah, so when we decided to get into this a little over a year and a half ago, we really truly saw a need in the community around the state to really be able to provide a service of safety and security for a lot of these businesses. So you wouldn't imagine starting a new business in any other industry and not have a bank account. So like you said, just running around trying to pay, a bunch of products or even at Lowe's with a bunch of cash, you don't want to do it. So we wanted to help out the customers or, in the businesses, and we wanted to provide them a regular checking account, write checks, deposit cash, be able to ACH, do wires, be able to pay your employees by direct deposit, start doing stuff online. Just everything that are huge benefits that regular businesses just take for granted. But we wanted to be able to step into this space and to make it happen. And right there, I feel like that's a great benefit. Just being able to have your business be organized, you're going to be able to have great records, keeping records for years if you have bank records and stuff like that. So that helps with audits. It helps with a lot of things. It helps businesses make business decisions to grow their business and how they'd like to grow in the future. We really stepped into this with a lot of compliance and a lot of work on the back end that we did to make sure that we would be able to bank in this space. So another good benefit, I would say, just coming with OSB, I know what we do on the compliance end. It would really help a new business really learn to grow and develop maybe even their own compliance side of it. Operations and compliance is not something that owners like to think about daily, but I just know even with our application and just starting off right there, it's really compliance driven. And so you might even have a question that a business might not even have thought about yet. And so they're learning how to answer that. They're going to be implementing it into their own daily workflow and stuff like that. And then also once they are approved and they become a customer, we continue that ongoing monitoring monthly. So anything with the state, anything OMA is needing, if you're not compliant with the state, you're not compliant with us. So we use a third-party software system that helps us track monthly reporting. It helps send out ticklers and reminders when licenses are due. So we always need copies of licenses and everything that you would be getting from the state to truly just be a cannabis-related customer of ours. So I feel like that's right there is, again, businesses are learning to help grow their compliance side. It kind of helps them think about the operational side of the business. So
I'm going to ask another question that I think is for Monica and you, Russ. Why should I have an independent account from my personal account for my business? Because we see that sometimes.
Yes. So just in banking in general, we don't want to see business transactions going through a personal account. So we've actually had to reach out to customers and, even shut some accounts down because like we're talking about, we want to be very upfront with whoever you're dealing with. So if you're able to tell us, hey, I am going to be starting a business, then we could have that conversation and we could start getting them going on a business account instead of a personal account.
I have a follow-up question from someone online.
Yep.
I'm curious what Russ would say is the biggest roadblock in being able to work with a new business. So like a new business that wants to open an account, what are the biggest challenges you see that they have to come over to be able to get an account?
You truly, it's organization. It's having all your ducks in a row. And we see that all the time with the compliance and having everything that they need. The application phase, it is kind of lengthy. So it goes directly to our compliance team. So multiple times our compliance team still has to reach out and get clarification on X, Y, and Z about your business. So again, just truly knowing everything that you know about your own business, and then working with other professionals like we have in here to really help nail down a lot of the documents that you might need.
Great. Monica, did you maybe want to add to that? Or?
Well, on a tax and accounting perspective, whether you're a cannabis business or a different type of business, that's not federally illegal, you still can't pierce the corporate veil and commingle funds like that when it comes to it. Listen, the IRS, when it comes down to audits and everything, the IRS is really good at their job. And when it comes to audits and saying, hey, we have money being moved over from personal over here to the business checking account, we're going to call that income. You're not taking very good records, on a non-cannabis basis level when it comes to commingling stuff that can be dangerous in audits as well, being disallowed lots of different expenses. So cannabis is already unique. It's already highly regulated. So definitely don't be commingling bank accounts, and make your accountant's job a little easier.
Yeah. How we look at it is we'll look at a business, but we're looking at their actual license. So if they have multiple licenses, we have to open up multiple accounts, because just like you're not supposed to be commingling in your funds and stuff like that. So yeah.
And you can't commingle the funds, and you have to have different bank accounts because they're different sets of activities, different sets of books, different sets of cost of goods sold.
It's just letting the business know up front, because they're like, all right, I'm going to have this one master account or, a parent company, and that's what they want their account to be, but you have to have multiple accounts.
So bringing you two in early in the conversation.
Yes. Everything cannabis is strategy.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. We're going to briefly talk 2 more questions, and I've got a little bit to add, but it sounds like Russ, you at OSB Bank, your team helps monitor those licenses as well. So what permits, licenses, or registration requirements do I need for my cannabis business, and where can I find this information? Just quickly, our BBB team, we have a team on our operations that helps monitor those licenses. It sounds like a lot of our other community partners also help cannabis business owners stay on top of those licensing requirements, send out reminders, and those types of things. So, Christina, if you want to talk a little bit about that in the state of Oklahoma.
Don't know how much time we have. I have OMA reports every month how many licenses are approved within the state. And I'll just go on the OMA website. That's where you process all of your applications. That's where all the information is that you need for the various types of licenses. You have your caregiver licenses, patient licenses, business licenses are broken down, and the total business licenses active as of last month when they did the last reporting was 10,258. The most are growers, about 6,700, processing's about 1,300, dispensaries are at 2,090, transportation at 74, and the transportation license you can get independently, but it also piggybacks off of your other business entity licenses. Waste disposal, waste permit, laboratory, and researcher. There's only 2 on research, 23 labs, and 1 waste permit. But that's where you go, and it's incredibly helpful and easy to navigate.
Yeah. Anything to add on that before we get to our last question?
Usually when sometimes we truly do get brand new customers or potential people looking about banking and getting into even just the cannabis space. So yeah, I think I sent some information that you could, so we have a great document that just truly just lines out exactly what we're going to be looking for when it comes to the application phase. So yeah, whenever you guys get a hold of somebody at OSB, we can easily just shoot this over as an email to people understanding what they even need to start looking for.
Perfect. So last question, and then we'll open up for open Q&A. So if you're online and you've got any questions for our panelists, feel free to pop those in the chat in person. You can just chime in the conversation once we finish up with this one. Where can I find resources discussed in this panel? And how can I connect to our panelists? Who wants to kick off with that one? I'll start. I mean, I can start and then we'll kick to you. So all of the resources that we discussed, and there's some follow-up things that our panelists have provided, will be sent out from our BBB team to your registered email from this event. So with Vias and some things, we've got a couple of other things that I'll attach. You can check that out there. And then contact information, you can reach out to our panelists and ask some questions or their company, organization contact. I'll share that. And Christina, do you want to add anything?
Just going to throw in those websites that I think all of us have touched on and jump in if there's something I forget. So the Secretary of State website is just sos.ok.gov, where you're going to look up trademarks, registered business names, and do your entity registrations. The OMA website's just omma.ok.gov. And then I think all of our information is going to be provided by the Better Business Bureau, and we appreciate it.
So the resources that we discussed throughout this, so anything that Girma had mentioned, websites or that placer.ai, I've taken notes down on this side, and then we have our team monitoring as well. So we'll just include a kind of a bulleted list, so if you need to check those out, you can. But we're going to open up the room for questions for our panelists, and if we don't have any, we can just do some organic conversation. That's cool with me.
I have a question. What do business owners need to know when they're filing federally, and are there any special processes or forms that they need to keep in mind when they are filing federally?
Are you talking about the federal taxes?
Yeah, just doing their federal taxes for cannabis businesses.
Well, when it comes to filing your tax returns, we need to know who all is involved in the company. Is there a complex operating agreement in place? Because the operating agreement will also tell the taxation treatment. If there's multiple people within the taxation treatment of the operating agreement, then we're looking at a partnership. But partnerships can be subject to additional self-employment tax of 15.3%. So at that time, maybe working with the right cannabis tax strategist to not just say, hey, I'll file a partnership return, but actually look at where the profit and loss lies to make a determination. Is that the strategy you should do? Should you file that? Should you change the taxation treatment? So depending on if you do change the taxation treatment too, you got to make sure you understand what the different dates of the filing requirements are and how that flows through to all of the partners.
No questions yet in the chat. Do you got anything?
No. Commercial spaces, as people are getting more mature with their cannabis strategies, are you seeing people being either more specific in what they're looking for, or are you seeing a trend of they want this type of structure or setup?
We're actually seeing both. There's some operators that say, just give me a space, I want to be open quickly. And there's others that they're willing to be very patient and be very strategic about what they're going for. And then additionally, with any industry, there's a level of consolidation. And so some of those conversations are happening.
Really?
Not broadly, but I'm already starting to see a couple of operators that are cashing out and moving to the next thing, but they decided Bitcoin's the new hot thing, so they're going to sell their cannabis operation and go into Bitcoin. But these things happen. That's why, as Christina said, having that sort of business prenup on the front end, that is so important.
Thank you. That's curious.
Question in the chat. We currently own a building that has a lien on it. Does this lien prevent us from using the building for a dispensary?
I looked at you.
I'm not going to speak definitively on this, but I don't think that licensing prevents that from taking place, but it could have other implications, such as occupancy permit, things like that. So without knowing where the building is, the type of building, the type of license, but check with your attorney, or you can reach out to me and I can get you an answer.
Cool. So your answer is that reach out to your professionals in your area and they're happy to help you unpack that a little bit more. Or our panelists are also happy to help dig into that if they have some more information.
Well, I'll jump in on that. The license is not going to be approved unless the specific certificates are provided that cover like all the building codes and everything else. So I don't think that a license is going to be accepted if there's an issue like that present that's even relevant. I haven't seen anything that's relevant to that specific question in reading through the regs, but maybe that helps a little bit.
Great, thank you. I think this question is for you, Russ, and possibly Monica. If I can't transfer money into a business account from a personal account as I work on building my business, how do I get money into my business account?
So we do have, if you get with us early on, we have seen exactly kind of what that person is talking about. So we have set up a specific investor account. So we will know all this money is truly investor money. It's coming in for the very first time into the banking system. We set them up with an account, knowing that they are going to be truly just maybe 6 months down the road, turning it into a business that is a cannabis related business. So we would be switching them over to the higher fees and tracking of a true marijuana bank account. So yeah, again, it's a lot of talking, a lot of figuring out up front, and trying to help them out.
And I'll piggyback off of that. When I was talking about, personal and business, what I meant is you can't really pay business expenses with personal, vice versa. Now, on a tax and accounting perspective, when someone invests into their business, we have that conversation of how much are you transferring over? Is this a business loan or does this get added to your shareholder basis? That way, when distribution comes, we lower the basis. If it's going to be a loan, how much are you actually loaning them? Because we're going to need to have some interest paid back as well. So on a tax and accounting perspective, when moving money, you can move money. I'm talking about paying business expenses through personal. Shifting money over, we can track it a certain way on the financials and balance statements.
So it's not an unlawful transaction is what you're saying. It's
Correct.
It's just one that you want to track appropriately.
Yes, it has to be done correctly. Correct.
So hire an accountant.
Once again, get with your accountant from the very beginning.
When I'm looking for a building to rent or buy or whatever it is for my cannabis, you had mentioned a couple of online websites that I could look at. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. LoopNet is basically a website where commercial properties are often placed. If you have a free account, you probably will only see about a fourth of the total available properties on that site. But from seeing the properties, you can pick a local commercial broker to work with, and they can help you find additional listed properties and off-market properties.
Thank you.
I have a question for Russ. Do you require operating agreements for entities to set up?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. Do you look at them with any particular lens?
We're looking at ownership, percentages. That helps just with our normal BSA, the Patriot Act of drilling down to who the beneficial owners are on the account. That's with any account in banking. So it's stuff like that. And then we have the operating agreement. We also ask for a partnership agreement if they have that, because percentages of ownership might not be what they're actually getting paid when it comes to that. So we want to know truly as much information that they have set up already for the business. So yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our attendees said that she's got some questions individually to follow up with you all. So be looking for that. I'll make sure to share her contact. And then same for one of our other attendees, also has a few more individual, I think, questions to kind of tackle. So if that is all the questions we have, we've got about 6 minutes left. So I'm good at leaving a little bit early. We can close down. But first, let's give our panelists a really the talent and just the knowledge of you all, and thank you so much for sharing. We so appreciate you. I could not have done this without you. I don't live in your world. I don't have the experiences that you experience, so I still appreciate you sharing with our community. Reminder that all of our online attendees, this event again was recorded. We've got tons and tons of resources to share with you, so be looking up for a follow-up from me questions about BBB events or what we do, I'm happy to help there. But thank you so much for attending. We are going to shut her down, and we hope you have a beautiful day, and we'll see you at the next BBB event.